The emergency room nurse looked at my face, then at my chart, then back at my face. That look, I'll never forget it. It wasn't judgment exactly, more like recognition. Like she'd seen this movie before and knew exactly how it ended. I told her I'd fallen in the kitchen while cooking, hit my head on the corner of the table. She nodded slowly, cleaning the gash on my forehead that would need 7 stitches, and quietly slipped a small card into my purse when she thought I wasn't looking. Domestic Violence Resource Center, it read. I pretended not to notice. I'm Elizabeth Valencia, 29 years old, and just 6 months ago, I thought I was living every woman's dream. Engaged to Marcus Weston, the kind of man other women stop to stare at in restaurants. Real estate developer, former college quarterback, the guy who brought flowers to my office every Friday. Everyone said I was the luckiest woman in Denver. Even my own mother couldn't stop gushing about what a catch he was. If only they knew that Prince Charming had a thing about salt. The salt thing, it sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, doesn't it? But it wasn't just salt. It was the coffee being 2 degrees too cold. It was the towels folded in thirds instead of halves. It was my laugh being too loud at his company dinners. It was wearing the blue dress when he'd just mentioned, not explicitly said, that the red one would be nice. Marcus had a gift for making me feel like I was constantly failing an exam I didn't know I was taking. That day, the day everything changed, I'd just had minor surgery. Nothing dramatic. Just removing a cyst that had been bothering me for months. The doctor said I should rest for at least 3 days, avoid lifting anything heavy, definitely no strenuous activity. But Marcus's mother, Gloria, was coming to visit the following week to help plan our wedding, and Marcus had made it crystal clear that everything needed to be perfect. The house needed to sparkle, the meals needed to be restaurant quality, and I needed to play the part of the devoted, capable future daughter-in-law. So there I was, 4 hours post-surgery, still woozy from the anesthesia, standing in our pristine kitchen trying to make his favorite dinner, herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables and garlic mashed potatoes. My abdomen throbbed where they'd made the incision, and I could feel the stitches pulling with every movement, but I kept going. Because the alternative was worse. The alternative was always worse with Marcus. You know, I used to joke with my friends that my cooking was so bad it seasoned itself with my tears. Looking back, that wasn't really a joke, was it? More like my subconscious trying to wave a red flag that my conscious mind kept ignoring. My friend Rachel used to laugh uncomfortably at those jokes, then quickly change the subject. I think she knew before I did. The salmon was in the oven, the vegetables were roasting beautifully, and I was just starting to mash the potatoes when I heard his car in the driveway. My stomach clenched, that Pavlovian response I'd developed over the past year. The sound of his BMW's engine had become my warning bell. Happy Marcus or angry Marcus? There was no way to tell until he walked through that door. I heard his footsteps on our porch, heavy, deliberate. The key in the lock turned with more force than necessary. Strike 1. The door closed with a slam rather than a click. Strike 2. His briefcase hit the hallway table hard enough to rattle the decorative bowl I'd bought at a craft fair, back when I still did things like go to craft fairs. Strike 3. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, and I knew immediately this was going to be bad. His jaw was clenched, that little muscle twitching the way it did when he was containing his rage in public. Except we weren't in public now. We were home, in his domain, where Marcus Weston didn't have to contain anything. He walked over to the stove without saying hello, without asking how my surgery went, without even looking at my face. He lifted the lid on the mashed potatoes, stirred them with the wooden spoon I'd been using, and brought a small taste to his lips. His face darkened like a storm cloud rolling in over the mountains. Before I continue, please help me to grow our community. If you like our stories, hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. It helps a lot. Thank you. The plate of vegetables I'd already plated as a tester, just to make sure they were perfect, sat on the counter. He picked up a piece of roasted carrot, chewed it slowly, deliberately, like a judge at a cooking competition. Then he set the carrot down and turned to me with that look, that terrible, cold look that made me feel 2 inches tall. "You forgot the salt again?" His voice echoed off our designer kitchen walls. Before I could even respond, before I could explain that I hadn't finished seasoning anything yet, that the potatoes were literally still being mashed, he shoved the plate toward me with such force that it slid across the granite countertop and shattered against the backsplash. The slap came next, hard, decisive, with the full force of his former athlete's strength behind it. My head snapped to the side, and I stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the kitchen table with the side of my head, the same spot the nurse would later stitch up. I felt the warmth of blood from my nose before I felt the pain, watched it drip onto the white tile floor we'd spent 3 weeks choosing together. My surgical stitches screamed in protest as I caught myself on the table, the pulling sensation making me gasp. He stood over me, his face twisted with disgust. "Stop acting so helpless. You're not dying, Elizabeth. You had a tiny procedure. Other women run marathons after giving birth, and you can't even make a simple dinner without screwing it up." The doorbell rang. We both froze. Marcus's face went through a transformation I'd seen dozens of times before, the monster tucking itself away, the mask sliding seamlessly into place. He rushed to help me up, suddenly gentle, suddenly concerned. "Oh, baby, are you okay? Here, let me get you a towel." He grabbed a dish towel and pressed it to my nose with the tenderness of a devoted fiancé, positioning his body between me and the hallway, so whoever was at the door wouldn't immediately see the scene. Then he walked calmly to answer it, and I heard the one voice I never expected. "Police. We received a call about a disturbance." My neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She must have heard the plate shatter, the yelling. She lived in the unit next door, a sweet elderly woman who always smiled at me in the hallway, but never said much. Apparently, she said enough when it counted. 2 officers stood at our door. One male, tall and young, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, and one female, Officer Martinez, according to her badge, with eyes that had seen this scene play out too many times before. Marcus immediately went into performance mode. I'd seen him do this with clients, with friends, with my family. He became the concerned, charming fiancé, his voice warm honey poured over broken glass. "Officers, I'm so sorry you had to come out. My fiancée just had surgery today. She's still a bit woozy from the anesthesia. She fell in the kitchen and hit her head. I was just about to take her to the emergency room." Officer Martinez looked past him to me, still holding the bloody towel to my nose. "Ma'am, is that what happened?" This was my moment. This was my chance to tell the truth, to end this nightmare. But Gloria was coming next week. The wedding invitations had been sent. My parents had already paid for their flights from Florida. And Marcus was staring at me with those eyes that promised consequences if I said the wrong thing. I fell, I heard myself say. Clumsy me, still getting used to the medication, I guess. But Officer Martinez wasn't looking at Marcus anymore. She was looking at the kitchen behind us, at the shattered plate, the vegetables scattered across the floor, the blood spatter pattern that told a different story than the one we were selling. You know, my mother always had this saying, "A man who complains about seasoning will season your life with misery." She'd say it whenever my father got too picky about her cooking, always with a laugh, always followed by my father kissing her cheek and saying her food was perfect. I thought it was just one of those cute things parents said. I didn't realize it was a warning. Officer Martinez asked if she could come in just to make sure I was really okay. Marcus had no choice but to agree. Refusing would look suspicious. The male officer stayed with Marcus in the living room, making small talk about the Broncos' chances this season, while Martinez guided me to the kitchen, away from Marcus's eye line. She pulled out a small notepad, pretending to write down details about my fall, but her eyes were taking in everything: the shattered plate, the blood pattern, the way I kept touching my abdomen where the surgical stitches were pulling. "That must have been some fall," she said quietly. "Managed to break a plate and bloodied your nose at the same time." I stuck to the story, mumbling about being disoriented, reaching for the counter, knocking the plate over as I fell. She nodded along, writing nothing down. "You know," she said, her voice casual but her eyes intense, "I see a lot of kitchen accidents. Funny how they tend to happen right around dinner time, right when people are stressed, tired, maybe arguing about, seasoning." My eyes widened. She'd heard more than I thought. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card, identical to the one the nurse had slipped into my purse earlier. She placed it on the counter next to me, covering it with her notepad. "Sometimes," she continued, "people need resources, information, options they didn't know they had. This card has some good information about home safety, preventing future accidents. From the living room, I could hear Marcus laughing at something the other officer said, that booming, charming laugh that had first attracted me to him at that charity gala 2 years ago. God, I'd been so stupid. All the red flags I'd explained away, rationalized, ignored, the way he'd criticized my friend Rachel until I stopped seeing her as much, how he'd convinced me to leave my job at the design firm to freelance from home so we could spend more time together. The gradual isolation that felt like love but was really control. I'm fine, I told Officer Martinez, but my voice cracked on the lie. She looked at me for a long moment, then slipped the card into my pocket herself. Keep it anyway, just in case you have a friend who might need it. When the officers left, Marcus's mask stayed in place for exactly 30 seconds after the door closed. Then he turned to me, his face cold as January in the Rockies. "You almost ruined everything," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Do you have any idea who that young officer was? His father is on the city council. One word from him about a domestic disturbance at my address, and there goes the Riverside Development Project." He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him, his fingers pressed into the spots that were already bruising from the slap. "My mother arrives Monday. 6 days, Elizabeth. You have 6 days to get your act together. The house will be spotless. You will be the perfect hostess. You will smile, you will cook, properly seasoned food, and you will charm her friends at the wedding shower she's planning. And if you embarrass me, if you make me look bad in front of my mother—" He didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. The promises of violence lived in the silence after his words, more terrifying than any specific threat could be. After he went to his office, I sat in the bathroom and examined the business card. On the back, Officer Martinez had written in pen, "You deserve better. When you're ready, Janice Martinez," with a direct phone number. I memorized the number, then tore the card into tiny pieces and flushed it down the toilet. But the number stayed in my head, repeating like a song you can't stop humming, a lifeline I wasn't ready to grab, but couldn't quite let go of either. That night, while Marcus slept soundly beside me, I lay awake thinking about salt. Such a small thing, such a basic thing. In ancient times, salt was currency, was life, was preservation. Now it was my breaking point, the thing that made me realize I couldn't preserve this relationship any longer, no matter how much I tried to season it with hope. Gloria Weston arrived on Monday like a hurricane in Chanel. She swept into our house with her Louis Vuitton luggage and immediately began her inspection. She ran her finger along the baseboards, checked inside the guest room closet, actually looked behind the toilet in the guest bathroom. I watched Marcus watching her, saw him tense every time she paused or frowned. Suddenly, his obsessive need for perfection made perfect sense. This woman had trained him well, just not in the ways that mattered. "Elizabeth," she said, looking me up and down like I was livestock at an auction. "You look tired, dear. Are you sleeping well? A bride needs her beauty rest. We can't have you looking haggard in the wedding photos." The bruise on my face had faded to yellow-green, carefully hidden under concealer that I'd had to buy 3 shades of to get the coverage right. I'd become an expert at camouflage in the past year. Should add that to my resume. Expert in hiding evidence of domestic violence. Very marketable skill. If this story is resonating with you, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps me share these important truths. And honestly, knowing you're out there listening keeps me going. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Gloria had planned our entire week down to 15-minute intervals. Wedding venue visits, cake tastings, meetings with florists, and of course, the wedding shower on Saturday. 75 of her closest friends and Marcus's business associates' wives would descend on our house to celebrate the upcoming union of Denver's golden couple. But while Gloria was planning my wedding, I was planning my escape. It started with Mrs. Chen. She knocked on our door Tuesday morning when Marcus was at work and Gloria was at her spa appointment. She brought cookies, left over from my book club, and asked if I was feeling better after my fall. We sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where my blood had stained the grout just days before, and she told me her story. 30 years ago, she'd been trapped too. Different generation, different circumstances, same fear, same bruises, same everybody thinks he's wonderful husband. It took her 5 years and a broken jaw to finally leave. But you're smarter than I was, she said, patting my hand. You have technology, resources, options I didn't have. She offered to keep things for me, important documents, emergency clothes, anything I couldn't risk Marcus finding. Her spare key was under the ceramic frog in her garden if I ever needed a safe place. She'd been watching, she said. She'd been documenting what she could see and hear through our shared wall. She had dates, times, recordings of the yelling. That afternoon, while Gloria dragged me to look at flower arrangements, my mind was elsewhere. I smiled and nodded as she rejected roses for being too common and tulips for being too Dutch. But I was thinking about my laptop, my design portfolio, 5 years of work that represented my only real chance at financial independence. Marcus had been sabotaging my freelance career for months, I'd discovered. I'd found the deleted emails in his computer one night when he was drunk at a company party. Potential clients reaching out, big projects I'd never seen. He'd been intercepting them, declining on my behalf, telling people I was no longer taking commissions. He wanted me dependent, financially trapped, but he'd made one mistake. He didn't know I'd set up an automatic cloud backup before he'd convinced me to give him my email password for emergencies. Wednesday brought Jim Harrison, Marcus's business partner, to dinner. Gloria actually cooked, not just supervised, making sure everything was properly seasoned, of course. I watched Jim watching Marcus, seeing the way Marcus criticized everything I did. The wine wasn't chilled to exactly the right temperature. I'd set the forks on the wrong side. I hadn't. I laughed too loudly at Jim's joke about his golf game. Jim kept trying to catch my eye, concern written across his weathered face. He'd known Marcus for 10 years, but something was shifting. After dinner, when Marcus walked his mother to her car for her evening socializing with old Denver friends, Jim helped me clear the table. "Elizabeth," he said quietly, "are you okay? Really okay?" I almost broke then, almost told him everything. But Gloria was coming back, and Marcus would only be gone for 5 minutes. And Jim was his business partner, not mine. "Why do you ask?" I managed. He hesitated, then said, "That software presentation last month. You had bruises on your arms. Marcus said you'd taken up boxing for wedding fitness, but," he trailed off, then added, "My sister, she used to date a guy who, well, I know what boxing bruises look like, and I know what other kinds look like too." Before I could respond, we heard Marcus's footsteps on the porch. Jim squeezed my shoulder gently and whispered, "If you need anything at all, you call me, day or night." Thursday, Gloria presented me with the prenuptial agreement, 40 pages of legal documents that essentially said if the marriage ended for any reason, I would leave with exactly what I brought in, which was nothing. Since Marcus had convinced me to sell my car, we don't need to, move out of my apartment, why pay rent when you can live here, and close my personal bank account? It's easier to manage finances together. "It's just a formality," Gloria said, her smile sharp as winter. "Though, really, Elizabeth, the idea that you would ever leave my Marcus is absurd. Where would you go? What would you do? You're 29 with no real career, no savings. Marcus is the best thing that ever happened to you." She was wrong about one thing. I did have savings. A small account Marcus didn't know about opened with Rachel's help at a credit union across town. Every cash tip I'd gotten from the few design clients I'd managed to keep, every rebate check, every $20 bill I'd found in jacket pockets, it all went there. $3,000. Not much, but enough for a security deposit and first month's rent somewhere far from here. That night, I made dinner. Gloria supervised, naturally, making sure I properly seasoned everything. She actually made me add salt 3 times to the soup, tasting after each addition, teaching me the proper amount. "Marcus is very particular," she said, as if I hadn't learned that the hard way. "He gets that from his father. Dear Harold, God rest his soul, once threw an entire Thanksgiving turkey in the garbage because I'd used rosemary instead of sage." She said it with fondness, like it was a charming quirk instead of abusive behavior, the generational trauma seasoned with nostalgia, served with a side of denial. I wanted to ask her if Harold had ever hit her, but I already knew the answer. It was in the way she flinched when Marcus raised his voice, the way she over-seasoned everything now, the way she looked at me with a mixture of pity and recognition. You know, there's this thing about abusers. They're remarkably unoriginal. They all read from the same playbook, generation after generation. The controlling behavior, the isolation, the financial abuse, the violence escalating slowly like a pot coming to boil. You don't realize you're being cooked until you're already burned. Friday morning, Marcus hit me where he thought it wouldn't show. The wedding shower was tomorrow, and he was spiraling about everything being perfect. The caterers had called to confirm, and I'd apparently given them the wrong time. I hadn't. Marcus had changed it twice, and his rage needed an outlet. He grabbed my upper arms, shaking me hard enough to rattle my teeth, then shoved me into the refrigerator. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and I felt something crack. Not a bone, but something inside me. The last piece of hope that maybe, somehow, this would get better. But bruises on upper arms show in a sundress, and Gloria, in her infinite wisdom about appearances, had chosen a sleeveless sundress for me to wear at the shower. It shows off your lovely figure, dear. Marcus is so lucky. That afternoon, while Gloria and Marcus went to the country club for lunch with his investors, I put my plan into motion. First, I went to Mrs. Chen's with my laptop and external hard drive. She helped me upload everything to multiple cloud services, then stored the physical drives in her safe. 5 years of design work. Protected. Then I called Rachel, my best friend who Marcus had driven away with his criticism and concerns about her influence on me. She cried when she heard my voice. Lizzie, oh my God, I've been so worried. I drove by your house last week and saw the police car. Are you okay? Are you safe? I told her everything. The abuse, the escalation, tomorrow's shower. She wanted to come get me right then, but I needed one more day. Just one more day. I need witnesses, I told her. Important ones. Gloria's friends, Marcus's business associates, people who matter in his world. Rachel understood immediately. What do you need me to do? We spent an hour on the phone planning. She would arrive early to the shower before the other guests. She'd have her phone ready to record. She'd already contacted a lawyer, her cousin who specialized in domestic violence cases. Papers were being drawn up, a restraining order ready to file. That evening, I cooked dinner perfectly. Every single thing seasoned to Gloria's exacting standards. I smiled when Marcus praised the meal. I laughed at Gloria's stories about the country club. I played the part of the devoted fiancé so well that Marcus actually kissed my forehead and said, "See, this is the Elizabeth I fell in love with." Yeah, the fictional one who didn't exist. After they went to bed, I crept to Marcus's home office. His computer was password protected, but Marcus wasn't as clever as he thought. The password was his college football jersey number plus his mother's birthday. Men like Marcus always think they're too important to be figured out. I found everything, not just my deleted emails, but so much more. Emails to other women, messages to his lawyer about hiding assets, and most damning, documents showing he'd been embezzling from his real estate development company, skimming from investor funds, charging personal expenses to company accounts, selling the same property shares to multiple buyers. Jim had started asking questions, and Marcus was planning to frame him for it. I forwarded everything to 3 email addresses, mine, Rachel's, and one more that would matter very soon. Then I cleared the sent folder and the browser history. Marcus wouldn't check. He was too arrogant to think I could navigate his technology. Saturday morning dawned bright and cruel. The caterers arrived at 9, the florists at 10. Gloria commanded the operation like a general preparing for battle, which wasn't far from the truth. She had me change my dress 3 times before settling on the original sundress. The bruises on my arms were purple-green fingerprints, perfect evidence poorly hidden by concealer that I deliberately applied too light. Marcus was in his element, all charm and confidence. He'd already had 2 whiskeys by noon, his tell that he was more nervous than he appeared. Good. He should be nervous. Rachel arrived at 12:30, 30 minutes before the other guests. She hugged me carefully, feeling me wince where the bruises were. Her eyes went hard, but she smiled sweetly when Gloria bustled over. "You must be Rachel. Elizabeth has told me so much about you." Gloria lied. I'd mentioned Rachel once, and Gloria had immediately labeled her as that career-obsessed friend who's probably jealous of your happiness. By 1 o'clock, our house was full. 75 women in designer dresses, sipping champagne and nibbling on properly seasoned canapes. Marcus held court on the patio with some husbands who'd dropped off their wives, including Jim Harrison, who kept watching me with those concerned eyes. At 1:30, Gloria clinked her champagne glass, calling everyone to attention for the opening of gifts. This was it, my moment. Before we start, I said, standing up, my voice shaking only slightly, I want to share something with all of you. You've all been so supportive of our engagement, and I think you deserve to know the truth about the man I'm marrying. Gloria's face went from confused to alarmed. Elizabeth, dear, what are you doing? Marcus started moving toward me from the patio, his face a mask of controlled panic. But Rachel had positioned herself between us, and Jim, bless Jim, had noticed the dynamics and stepped in front of Marcus. Just showing everyone what a lucky bride I am, I said, pulling out my phone. Our TV was already connected to my phone. Marcus had insisted on the smart home setup that he didn't know I understood better than him. The first video started playing on our 75-inch screen. Marcus screaming about the coffee temperature. His voice filled our perfect living room, bouncing off the cathedral ceilings he was so proud of. The room went silent except for the sound of Marcus on the recording. You stupid bitch, how hard is it to make coffee? A trained monkey could do better. Then, the next video, the salt incident from last week. I'd had a nanny cam in the kitchen, disguised as a cookbook, a gift from Mrs. Chen. The slap was crystal clear, the sound echoing through our horrified audience. Gloria dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on our Italian marble floor, the sound almost musical. Turn it off, Marcus roared, pushing past Jim. But I'd locked the system with a password he'd never guess, the date of our first date, the one he'd forgotten 3 times. The videos kept playing. Marcus throwing my laptop. Marcus showing me the prenup and saying, you'll sign it because you have no choice. No one else would want you anyway. Marcus on the phone with his lawyer. She's too stupid to understand what she's signing. Trust me, Elizabeth won't be a problem. But the grand finale wasn't about the abuse. It was the email thread between Marcus and his phantom investors, the doctored contracts, the proof that he'd stolen over $2 million from the Riverside Development Project. Jim Harrison's face went from concern to furious. You son of a bitch! You were setting me up! One of Gloria's society friends, Judge Patricia Brennan, had her phone out calling someone. Another woman, whose husband was on the state licensing board, was taking photos of the screen. Marcus lunged for me then, his mask completely gone, nothing but rage in his eyes. But Officer Martinez walked through our front door at that exact moment, accompanied by 3 other officers. Rachel had called them the moment the first video started playing. Marcus Weston, you're under arrest for assault, embezzlement, and fraud. The room erupted. Gloria was screaming that this was entrapment, that I was a lying gold digger. One of her friends actually laughed at that. Gloria, we just watched him hit her. We all saw it. As they cuffed Marcus, he looked at me with such hatred that some of the women actually stepped back. You've ruined everything, you stupid bitch. You're nothing without me. Actually, I said, my voice steady now, I'm everything without you. I'm just seasoned differently than you expected. Mrs. Chen would have been proud of that line. She was outside, by the way, having called in a concerned neighbor complaint exactly when Rachel had asked her to. The next few hours blurred together like watercolors in rain. The guests didn't leave immediately. Many of them stayed to give witness statements to the police. Judge Brennan personally called the district attorney. 3 women pulled me aside to share their own stories, ones they'd never told anyone. Jim Harrison was on the phone with his lawyer, then with the FBI. Apparently, the embezzlement crossed state lines, making it a federal case. He kept apologizing to me, saying he should have known, should have done something sooner. You tried, I told him. That night at dinner, you tried. Gloria had collapsed on our designer couch, alternating between wailing about her poor, misunderstood son and threatening to sue me for defamation. The detective taking her statement finally told her that truth was an absolute defense against defamation, which shut her up for exactly 30 seconds before she started blaming me for not being a better girlfriend, not keeping Marcus happy, not understanding his needs. One of her friends, a silver-haired woman named Dorothy, who'd been silent during the shower, finally spoke up. "Gloria, your son is just like his father, and you know it. We all knew what Harold was doing to you. We should have said something then. I won't make that mistake again." The revelation hung in the air like morning fog over the mountains. Gloria's carefully constructed fantasy shattered just like that champagne glass. Rachel drove me to her apartment that evening. I couldn't stay in that house another night. Mrs. Chen promised to watch over my things until I could come back for them. The next morning, Sunday, the story was already spreading through Denver society like wildfire through drought-dry grass. Monday brought lawyers. Marcus's attorney trying to negotiate. My lawyer, Rachel's cousin Sarah, who was 5 feet of pure legal fury. The restraining order was approved immediately. The video evidence made it a slam dunk. Marcus's assets were frozen pending the fraud investigation. Gloria tried to claim the house was hers, but the deed was in Marcus's name alone. His ego wouldn't let him share ownership with anyone, not even Mommy. By Wednesday, Marcus was trying to make bail. Denied, flight risk, the judge said, noting the 3 offshore accounts they'd discovered. Jim Harrison had hired a forensic accountant who was finding more fraud every hour. Turns out Marcus had been stealing since the day they'd formed their partnership. Thursday, I went back to the house with a police escort to get my things. Gloria was there, packing her son's belongings. She looked at me with such venom, I actually stepped back. "You've destroyed him," she spat. "A good man ruined by a vindictive little nobody." "No," I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. "He destroyed himself. I just refused to be destroyed along with him. I only took what was mine. My clothes, my personal items, my grandmother's jewelry that Marcus had suggested I keep in his safe. I left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter, right where the bloodstains were still faintly visible in the grout. 2 weeks later, Marcus took a plea deal. 3 years for assault, 5 to 7 for embezzlement, sentences to run concurrently. His lawyer argued for leniency, first offense, productive member of society, blah, blah, blah. But Judge Patricia Brennan was presiding. The same Judge Brennan who'd been at the shower, who'd seen the videos, who'd heard him threaten me even as he was being arrested. "Mr. Weston," she said, her voice carrying through the courtroom, "you had every advantage in life. Wealth, education, opportunity. And you chose to use those advantages to abuse someone you claim to love and steal from people who trusted you. Productive members of society don't leave their fiancés bleeding on kitchen floors. 5 to 7 years, no early parole. The best part? In a beautiful twist of cosmic justice, Marcus was assigned to kitchen duty in prison. I heard from Jim, who heard from someone at the courthouse, that Marcus had already complained 3 times about the food being over-salted. The cook, a lifer named Bruno who'd been in for 20 years, told him to eat it or starve. There were no other options on Bruno's menu. 6 months. That's how long it took for me to remember who I was before Marcus. 6 months of therapy, of rebuilding, of learning to trust my own judgment again. The support group met Wednesday evenings in a church basement that smelled like coffee and hope. Officer Martinez, Janice, she insisted I call her now, came to speak one night. "You saved yourself," she told me. "I gave you a card. You did everything else, but it wasn't just me. It was Mrs. Chen, who'd become my adopted grandmother, teaching me her family recipes, all perfectly seasoned she'd wink. It was Rachel, who'd never really left, just waiting in the wings for me to let her back in. It was Jim Harrison, who'd dissolved the company rather than try to salvage Marcus's reputation from it, then hired me as lead designer for his new venture, a firm focused on affordable housing. "You've got an eye for design," he said, looking at my portfolio. Marcus was an idiot in more ways than one. The business launched last month. I designed our logo, our website, our entire brand identity. My name is on the door, Elizabeth Valencia, Chief Design Officer. My bank account has my name only. My apartment, small but mine, has no room for anyone else's opinion about my decorating choices. Gloria tried one last time to contact me, a letter forwarded through my lawyer. She blamed me for everything naturally. Marcus was innocent, framed, a good boy who'd been corrupted by a gold digger. I had Rachel frame the letter. It hangs in my bathroom, right where I can see it every morning and remember what gaslighting looks like in cursive handwriting. Mrs. Chen and I cook together every Sunday. She taught me her secret for perfect seasoning. Taste as you go, trust your instincts, and never let anyone tell you your palate is wrong. We laugh about it, but it's not really about cooking. It never was. The support group has grown. 15 regulars now, all at different stages of leaving or left. I tell my story once a month to whoever needs to hear it. The new ones always ask the same question. How did you know when it was time? When the salt became more important than my safety, I tell them. When I realized I was apologizing for gravity, for oxygen, for existing. When I understood that nothing I could do would ever be enough, so I might as well save myself. Last week, I ran into one of Gloria's society friends at the grocery store. She hugged me right there in the produce section, told me I looked wonderful, that I was glowing. Then she leaned in and whispered, "My daughter is leaving her husband." She said your story gave her courage. That's the thing about speaking up. It's not just for you. It's for all the women still setting the table for their own destruction, seasoning their own suffering with silence. Marcus gets out in 4.5 years, if he behaves. I'll be 34 then. Probably married to someone who doesn't critique my cooking. Maybe with kids who will grow up knowing their worth isn't measured in someone else's approval. Or maybe I'll still be single, building my business, living my life seasoned exactly how I like it. I teach self-defense now, Monday evenings at the community center. Not just the physical moves, though those are important, but the mental ones. How to recognize the first red flag, the testing of boundaries, the slow erosion of self that starts with something as small as complaining about salt. Your instincts are your best defense, I tell them. That uncomfortable feeling when someone's anger seems disproportionate to the situation, that's your intuition telling you to pay attention. Listen to it. It's properly seasoned with millions of years of evolution designed to keep you safe. 3 women from the wedding shower have joined the class. Dorothy, Gloria's former friend, sponsors it now, paying for women who can't afford the fees. She never talks about Harold, Gloria's late husband, but she doesn't have to. We all know why she's there. The universe has an interesting sense of humor. Last month, I got a catering request for a corporate event. The client specifically asked for food that's perfectly seasoned. Not too much, not too little, just right. It was Jim's new company launch. He'd invited all the people who'd been at that shower, the ones who'd stood by me, who'd given statements, who'd refused to let Marcus's charm erase what they'd seen. I cooked everything myself. Mrs. Chen helped, of course, and Rachel was my sous chef. Every dish was seasoned with confidence, garnished with freedom, served with a side of survival. During the dinner, Dorothy stood up to make a toast. "To Elizabeth," she said, raising her glass, "who taught us all that when life underseasons you, you don't lower your standards. You change your recipe entirely." The only complaint we got? One anonymous comment card saying the food was too salty. We all laughed until we cried. Then we framed it. It hangs in my office now, right next to my business license and my degree in design that I finally finished last month. Some might see it as a reminder of trauma. I see it as a reminder of triumph. Because now I know the truth about salt. Too little and life is bland. Too much and it's ruined. But just right? Just right is a decision only you can make for yourself. Never let anyone else hold your salt shaker. You're perfectly seasoned just as you are.